G'day and welcome to Kareem and Does It Matter? Today I'm going to talk about a subject that's fairly close to my heart in the respect that I love comics, I love science fiction, I love the imaginative sphere. Speculation and creativity are essential to me. I'm a budding author, written a book which I'm going to self-publish this year, and I've got a couple more in the works. So imagining how an alternative world could be, imagining how the world might be in the future is an important part of the way I think. Capturing elements from the past, from contemporary times, and imagining how they might evolve into the future is kind of important. One of the things I've noticed in popular TV film, it started in the comic books and it's migrating into film, is that it's been about machines, Terminator and Robocop and all those, sort of fear the machine, worry about the machine kind of thing, and AI, numerous tropes and movies and shows, people being trapped in their houses with smart AIs taking over their homes, inseminating them, trying to create cybernetic offspring, blah, 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 the endless number of stories of that nature. One of the really interesting things I've noticed, and it started in the comics, and it started quite a while ago. I saw it start to creep in the 80s and the 90s, and it's definitely a huge thing now, is not the dominance of powers as such, not the dominance of machines, but the power of mind. Psionicism, telekinesis, telepathy, precognition, all these, paranormal abilities locked and hidden away in the tremendous mystery that is human consciousness and neurological complexity. Now, I'm going to preface that with a little bit of background. Neurologically, there's been a lot of discoveries recently. Consciousness is being studied. A lot of money's being spent on it, a lot of studies being done on it, because we need, if we're going to ever create any kind of workable AI, other than, some pretty dumb algorithms that do amazing things, but they're still effectively quite dumb. If we're going to create AI machines that can negotiate the real life, we've seen how difficult it is for Tesla and Lyft and Uber to create cars that are safe to drive on the road, and they're still not quite there. They're getting very close, but they're not quite there. Just negotiating a very limited aspect of reality is enormously difficult, and it makes us realize how the mind, the human mind and even animal minds, are incredibly efficient at grasping reality, at taking sensory data and processing it and returning something that's actually close to reality in some respects anyway, in a broad number of respects. And it's really hard to make machines that can do that. So we've been studying consciousness a lot, and what we discovered was some interesting features, and I'm not going to pretend to explain them in any detail because I don't understand them and I don't have a biophysics background that would allow me to explain it any more than I already am. So I'm probably making a hash of it, and for those scientists out there and people who do understand this better than I do, my apologies. Human brainwaves create multi-scalar structures within them that are apparently multi-dimensional, several dimensions beyond what we currently have. So again, if you want to understand the physics of that, there are a number of papers that have gone on to describe how the human brain, or human consciousness as it functions in the brain, creates some very strange effects, very, very spooky, literally spooky as in the physics term, spooky effects, and we don't understand why. We don't understand what they mean, we don't know what they signify, but they're obviously important because they wouldn't happen if they weren't. I don't think, and most people don't think, they're signal noise or anything like that. They are part of the nature of consciousness. So consciousness is super complicated, multi-dimensional even, and as a result, the physics of it are quite beyond us at this point in time. We'll get there, but they're testing the boundaries of the greatest minds on the planet. So mind is the mystery. Mind is the true mystery. Mind is the ultimate power. And in comics, you've got psionicists in particular, Phoenix in Marvel, and many of the great tribunal in DC. You've got all these different advanced human and alien power, and the great powers Q in Star Trek. The great powers, it's all mind, it's all mental, it's all the grasp of the mind. So I sort of like to think about from a philosophical point of view. What does that mean? What does it mean that underneath all the fear of robots, fear of aliens, fear of superior technology, fear of all these other things, why is it that we almost incontrovertibly, in the long run, our greatest villains and our greatest heroes, the greatest powers that we can imagine, are creatures that use mind, or seem to use mind alone, to warp and change and control reality? And I think that is partly our sort of tribal, primitive when we didn't understand nature and things just happened. Lightning just struck, wind just blew, earthquakes just happened, and it was, attributed to vast powers. Eventually we've anthropomorphized our gods into human-like shape. But before that, during the animistic period of human civilization, which was probably by far the largest, we attributed it to powers, to amorphous powers within nature that we didn't understand. And we're kind of approaching that again in terms of our studies of consciousness, because it is much more complex and much more convoluted and much more mysterious than we ever thought. It's just not as simple as scientists thought 30 or 40 years ago when we really started to look at consciousness. So the comic books reflect that the discoveries that we've made, that the mind is possibly the greatest mystery of all, and one that may confound us for some time to come. And it's the secret to an awful lot of other developments like AI and robotics, and even the creation of life in the future, and so on and so on. Intelligent life anyway, and boosting the intelligence of other species, including our own. It's all key to all of those things. Whether or not we want to do them or not is a different argument entirely. But if we do want to do those things at any time and modify ourselves, we're going to need to understand how we work at that fundamental intrinsic level. And we know that the mind is the key to everything. So, when you pare away all the tropes of robots and aliens and scary shit, the true mystery is the human mind. The true mystery, the comic book writers understood this, is the human mind, and the many, many layers of a seemingly increasingly deep onion, more layers than we ever thought, hovering there. And I want to add some speculation now, finish off with that, but just a teaser of an episode. I'm just trying to get you to think about maybe what might be, and you can add the comments in below if you want to, and actively I encourage discussion on this matter. I do wonder if at some point we're going to recognize that the mind has capacities that are undeveloped. Like evolution controls everything, the way we develop. It's an adaptation to environment, to circumstances, some mutation, but generally we're responding to our environment. So the reason we don't see people running around throwing buildings with their mind is because there's never been any real need for anyone to do anything like that. I mean, we don't need to move pencils with our mind because we have these amazing things called hands, all right? And we can make tools. We developed tools because we didn't have telekinesis. We developed language because we didn't have telepathy. Lots of things happened because options weren't open to us, but that doesn't mean those options don't potentially exist within the human mind embryonically. We find that there are vestigial organs and functions, even at endocrinal level, molecular level in the body, that are just old. We're riddled with junk DNA, and it's not junk, but some of it is anachronistic. Some of it is DNA we no longer use, or RNA sequences that they're no longer major functions of us because we've adapted past them, and they're still sitting there as sort of museum pieces within our biological structure, but they're no longer needed. So we've evolved past those things. Some things have also possibly evolved tangentially and never gone anywhere. Evolution is an untidy process. So my theory, and this is an entirely speculative theory, is that within human genes, there's a whole range of potential molecular structures that are embryonic, that are tangential, that are not particularly useful at this point in time, that future genetic engineering could potentially exploit, develop, and enhance. And mutant X-Men might not be so speculative and so distant in terms of possibility than as not as distant as we think, because it may well be possible to mutate and change genetic structures and molecular structures in people to take advantage of some of these possibly gems hiding in our junk DNA, and also enhance particular effects. There have been studies that show human beings can affect electronic items at a very electronic exchanges at a very, very low level, but yeah, they can change the way screensavers play across a computer. I mean, we don't know how this is done. We have no mechanism for it, but we know it can be done. So there's some odd, spooky at distance effects, and that's again the physics term, that human beings' brains seem to be able to do. There's loads of stuff on the internet about it, so check into it yourself. Make sure it comes from reputable scientific sources and not, your Gaia or one of those other dodgy sites that just run with the ball a million miles into Fantasyland direction. But there is legitimate reason to think that the human brain has some spooky at distance interactions with the universe. We've recently discovered that quantum effects can affect much larger items than we ever thought. So obviously these quantum effects, these spooky at distance effects that the brain has clearly got some little handle on, affect the Newtonian universe, the large scale universe, as opposed to just the small scale universe. So there's a lot of developments recently that indicate to me that very possibly, with a little bit of tweaking and engineering, we might be able to increase those quantum effects, that spooky at distance ability that the brain seems to have erratically and very, very weakly. What if we can enhance that effect? I think in the future, more and more and more, refining our minds more than our bodies, refining the capacity of our brain to produce and process and work and understand and unfold in these multiple dimensions and create spooky at distance effects might actually be the secret to our evolution, might actually be the secret to the next stage of human existence. I could be wrong, probably am, but it's an interesting idea, and yeah, I welcome any discussion on the matter. No doubt there are people out there that know a lot more about it than me. Let's have a play, let's have a chat. Cheers. Thanks very much.